My name is Audrey Lewis. I am an intern at Girls Rock Santa Barbara for the podcasting unit, and I will be interviewing Marsha Bailey. Welcome, Marsha. Would you like to give a little background on yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Audrey. I'm the founder and the CEO Emerita of Women's Economic Ventures. We're a nonprofit in Ventura and Santa Barbara County that helps create economic equity for women by helping them start up and expand small businesses. I've been doing that for 32 years. This is my last year, and I'm retiring at the end of this year.
What changes have you seen in women's status during your lifetime, and what hasn't changed enough?
Well, certainly since I first started looking for my first job when I was a teenager and after college, the right of businesses to discriminate against women has changed radically. So when I was looking for a job, you'd open up the want ads in the paper and the jobs would be listed under help wanted male or help wanted female. That's one thing that has changed. The first job interview I went to after college, the interviewer asked me if I was married and if I could type. Here I was, a person with a degree in art, and I was actually looking for a design job. So I learned to lie in my interviews and say, no, I can't type. um, the other way that that's more relevant to WEV is that when we first started out planning our program in the late 80s, there were not a lot of high profile women in business who we could look to as role models. Yeah. Estee Lauder, Mary Kay Ash, those were kind of the women that we knew of who were in business. But, when you looked around, there were not a lot of high profile women in business, and certainly not, very few women on boards.
Mm-hmm. Because it was only not very long ago that we were still fighting for our rights and fighting to be able to vote and to have a voice in our world and what world we live in. And so I think that there has been a lot of progress, but yeah, I agree with you and everything that you're saying.
Yeah, if you look at historically, when women were fighting for the right to vote and when this amendment passed, they called it the Women's Hour. And then in the 80s, we had the Year of the Woman. That was the year when a handful of women won congressional seats or seats in the Senate. Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry, but an hour or a year isn't really enough. I'd really like to see the millennium of the women and the woman. And it has been very encouraging to me to see the number in diversity of women who have been going into politics. And really that leadership part to me is what is just absolutely the most important. And it's not only political leadership, but it's community leadership, in all of our institutions and our businesses.
Yeah, never once in our history has there been a female president. And at first you look at that and you're not really bothered by it. You're like, whatever. But if you really, really look at it, like, we're not really represented, or we have never really been represented by someone in such high power. And although we are starting to have more representation there, which is totally awesome, I do believe that there still is a lot of just, I guess you could say, like, underlying, like, not sexism, things that have been in place for such a long time that it's the norm. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and it's okay to call it sexism.
Yeah.
It really is. When you look at a photo in the paper of a group of white men making decisions about women's health and reproductive rights, and there's not a single mm-hmm. woman sitting at the table, that's a problem. And that's why having women at the table, whatever table that is so important, because that's what gives us a voice. Right now during the pandemic, I read a headline on an article this morning that said, because of lack of access to childcare, that the pandemic could set women back, a generation. Yeah. And the first thing that that strikes me about that headline is like, why just women? Why
Yeah.
is it just women's responsibility?
That's all that we have been taught. And although I do think, I keep saying this, like it has been getting better, um, that's only because women have been fighting for hundreds of years now. And the fact that we even had to like fight for our just basic fundamental rights is like insane.
That's right. I always, often I kind of misspeak and I say, the 19th Amendment gave us the right to vote. They
Hmm.
didn't give us anything. We won that right. We fought for that right. Individual women fought for that right for their entire adult lives and actually died before they saw that right
Yeah.
being being granted. And having studied rhetoric in graduate school, one of the oldest kind of devices that's used to uh, persuade people is this idea that, well, we've always done it that way, and so that makes it somehow right.
It's crazy to think that people actually assume that because of your gender, you don't deserve your rights.
When you think about uh, some of the rights that women have won, over the years, a lot of the protective legislation, that was meant to protect women, in the workplace, like, overtime, or not allowing women, for instance, to lift more than a certain amount of weight. Um, in the long run, that started to actually hold women back. I first started working with WEV and started doing all the research around, the pay gap between men and women. Um, Male high school dropouts earned more than female college graduates, and we're still fighting this gap. That's
Yeah.
one of the things that the early suffragists really worked towards. It was a very early plank in their platform, was to um, uh, achieve equal pay for equal work for men and women. And here we are over 100 years later, and we still haven't achieved that.
Um, why is it so important to have a seat at the table, or like, um, what are the outcomes when women are represented and have that leadership role?
Well, take, for example, childcare, which we talked about a few minutes ago. So, if women ran corporations and if they were equally represented in the government, I suspect that we would have affordable, if not free, childcare. Um, just like we have free public school. I mean, we're pretty much the only developed country in the world that does not provide access to affordable childcare. And when you don't have that, because we still do expect women to take on care not only for kids but for our elders, it holds them back from achieving in their careers or their businesses. I mean, there's a group called the World Economic Forum, and they put out a report a couple of years ago that indicated that it's four different indicators like political, education, health, and economics. The only place that we've really made significant strides in terms of reaching parity with men is in education. In that now in the US, there are actually more women who graduate from college than men. But in all the other areas, we're still really far behind. And at the current
Hmm.
rate, we won't catch up for another 200 years, 208 or something like that years.
Wow.
And so if you have more women at the table really focusing on what's important, I think I'm hoping we can shorten that timeline significantly.
Yeah. So thank you, Marsha, for coming to my interview today. And thank you for talking with me about this because I think it's really important and it needs to be talked about a lot more. So just thank you.
You're welcome, Audrey, and I'm really happy that you are so engaged and interested. It does my heart good.
That's good to hear.